Welcome to Starbound. My name's Chikondi, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Farron and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story. The vast chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Vexcree of the Drakari Imperial Fleet strode forward, each step of his armored exoskeleton echoing like thunder against the polished quantum marble floor. Four massive arms folded across his carapace as he clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind.
"We have reviewed your species' history,"
he announced, voice like gravel in a steel drum.
"and we find your continued existence perplexing."
Ambassador Tavia Blackwood, Earth's representative, raised an eyebrow. Unlike the towering insectoid before her, she stood barely 6 feet tall, wearing a simple Navy diplomatic uniform without armor or visible weapons. Her dark skin contrasted with striking silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight braid.
"Perplexing,"
she echoed, voice cool and controlled.
"Perhaps you could elaborate, Ambassador?"
Around them, representatives from 17 alien civilizations shifted nervously. The emergency session had been called after Drakari warships had been detected at the edge of human territory. Everyone knew what typically followed Drakari diplomatic missions: subjugation or extinction. Vexcree's secondary maxillae flexed.
"Your species evolved on a Deathworld. Constant natural disasters, megafauna predators, extreme temperature variations. Yet you display softness."
He spat the word like poison.
"You aid the wounded. You preserve the weak. You cooperate."
Tavia's lips quirked into the barest hint of a smile.
"And this troubles you?"
"It defies natural law,"
Vexcree's voice boomed.
"Soft things should not survive. You domesticate apex predators and call them good boys. You run into burning buildings for strangers. You create weapons of planetary destruction and then choose not to use them."
The Galactic Council chamber rippled with nervous energy. The Drakari had conquered 17 worlds in the lost century. No species had successfully resisted them.
"Perhaps,"
Tavia suggested mildly,
"your understanding of strength is incomplete."
the chamber went dead silent. Several counselors gasped. The Miraxian delegate actually fainted. Vexcree's compound eyes flashed crimson.
"You dare question the strength of the Drakari?"
Tavia didn't flinch.
"I merely suggest that strength manifests in many forms."
"Enough!"
Vexcree slammed one massive fist into the speaker's podium, splitting the ancient wood.
"We will settle this in the ancient way. Trial by combat. One champion from each species. No weapons, no armor. Just raw power."
The council erupted in panicked chatter. The Drakari had never been defeated in ritual combat. Their natural armor alone could withstand small arms fire.
"If your champion wins,"
Vexcree continued,
"we will recognize humanity's strength and withdraw. If you lose..."
His hypopharynx oozed saliva in anticipation.
"Earth becomes the 18th jewel in the Drakari crown."
Counselor Zuthvar of the Eluxian Federation rose.
"Ambassador Blackwood, perhaps we should discuss alternative diplomatic..."
Tavia silenced him with a raised hand, her eyes never leaving Vexcree's.
"We accept."
The chamber exploded in shocked exclamations. Vexcree's ugly insectoid face couldn't smile, but his posture radiated smug satisfaction.
"You accept doom so readily?"
Tavia shrugged, a casual, very human gesture that seemed bizarrely out of place given the stakes.
"Of course. Pick a time, pick a place.
Her smile widened, all teeth and no warmth.
Just don't whine when it's over.
The combat arena on Neutral Station 7 hung suspended in space like a gleaming silver disc. Originally designed for ceremonial exhibitions, today it would witness a battle that would determine the fate of billions. The Drukhari arrived first, their massive warship dwarfing the station. From it emerged General Varkta, the pride of the swarm, conqueror of the Axelon system, devourer of the Tizani defense fleet. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton gleamed obsidian black with pulsing crimson bioluminescent streaks. 4 arms, each ending in serrated claws, flexed in anticipation. The 2 upper arms could punch through starship hull plating. The lower pair could snap durasteel beams like twigs. The assembled dignitaries and council representatives watched from the observation deck as Varkta entered the arena, his steps leaving small indentations in the reinforced floor.
"Behold,"
announced Vexcree to the gathered audience,
"General Varkta, undefeated in 342 death duels. His carapace can withstand plasma fire. His blood can repair catastrophic damage in seconds. He is the living embodiment of Drukhari superiority."
The crowd murmured nervously. Several representatives were already drafting condolence messages to Earth. Then the human shuttle arrived. It was small, unassuming, bearing only the insignia of the Terran Defense Force. As its ramp lowered, the crowd leaned forward in anticipation. A single human male walked down the ramp. Captain Elias Ward stood 6'2", solid but lean, with weathered bronze skin and close-cropped dark hair shot through with silver at the temples. A network of scars crisscrossed his exposed forearms and neck, telling tales of battles survived. He wore simple black fatigues and combat boots. No armor, no weapons, no enhancement tech visible. He stretched casually, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for a workout rather than a death match. The observation deck erupted in confused whispers.
Is this some kind of joke?
Where's the real champion? Are they sending him to negotiate surrender?
Vexcree stared in disbelief.
This is humanity's champion? This meat sack with delicate skin and fragile bones?
Tavia Blackwood stood calmly at the railing.
Captain Elias Ward, 15 years Special Forces, veteran of the Mars Rebellion and the Europa incursion.
He's not even augmented!
Vexcree sputtered.
No exoskeleton, no genetic modifications. He's just a normal human.
More or less,
Tavia replied with a mysterious smile. Down in the arena, Ward approached the center, stopping a few meters from the massive Drukhari. The size difference was comical, like a wolf facing a tank. Varkta's mouth clicked rapidly, the Drukhari equivalent of laughter.
This is an insult! You send this to face me?
Ward grinned, an expression that never reached his eyes. "Careful, big boy," he drawled. "If I flex too hard, I might hurt your feelings." Varkta hissed.
"I will split open your ribcage and slurp out your entrails with my proboscis."
Ward cracked his knuckles, radiating an inexplicable confidence that made several observers shift uncomfortably. "You know," Ward said conversationally, "where I'm from, we have a saying about guys who talk big." He rolled his neck until it popped. "They're usually compensating for something." The observation deck fell silent. No one spoke to a Drukhari warlord that way, not if they wanted to keep breathing. Varkta's bioluminescent streaks flashed in fury.
"We'll see if you're so confident when my raptorial legs shred through your soft skin."
Ward winked.
"Let's find out."
The combat signal chimed, a single clear tone that seemed to hang in the recycled air of the arena. For a heartbeat, neither combatant moved. Then Varkta exploded into motion. 900 pounds of armored chitin surged forward like an avalanche, 4 massive arms extended in a deadly embrace that would pulverize anything caught between them. His movement created actual wind pressure, the displaced air howling as his claws sought human flesh. Ward wasn't there. With fluid grace that surprised Varkta, the human pivoted on his back foot, his body arching like water flowing around stone. Varkta's momentum carried him past, claws slicing through empty space where Ward's torso had been a millisecond before. As the Drakari's mass hurtled by, Ward struck. A single, precise blow delivered with the hardened edge of his palm, directly into the microscopic seam where carapace met abdomen. The impact made a sound like a knuckle tapping glass. Varkta flinched, barely perceptible, but for a being who had demolished entire squads without taking a scratch, that tiny reaction sent ripples of shock through the observation deck.
Impossible,
whispered a Cytherian diplomat.
He found a weak point on his first strike.
Varkta whirled with terrifying speed for something so massive, his compound eyes flashing crimson.
Lucky hit,
he growled, mandibles clicking in agitation. Ward bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, hands loose and ready at his sides. Wasn't luck, big guy. It's skill and forethought. Something you've obviously never had to use. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every joint, every seam, every potential vulnerability in the Drakari's natural armor. The warlord attacked again, this time with calculated precision. His lower arms swept horizontally, forcing Ward to choose a direction, while his upper arms positioned for killing strikes. The human dove into a roll beneath the lower swipe, came up inside Varkta's guard, too close for the powerful arms to generate full force, and hammered 3 rapid strikes into the Drakari's midsection. Varkta roared, the sound so deep it vibrated the observation windows. One massive claw managed to clip Ward's shoulder as the human retreated, tearing fabric and drawing a thin line of crimson across bronze skin. First blood to you, Ward acknowledged with a nod, rolling the shoulder experimentally. Nice reflexes. The Drakari pressed his advantage, charging again, but this time Ward stood his ground until the last possible moment. The audience gasped collectively as the human and alien collided, but Ward had dropped to a crouch, planting his shoulder against Varkta's lower abdomen and using the Drakari's own momentum to flip him. 900 pounds of alien warlord went airborne, flipping over Ward's braced body and crashing to the arena floor with an impact that cracked the reinforced surface. Dust billowed up from pulverized concrete.
That's a judo throw adapted for asymmetrical mass ratios,
Ambassador Blackwood murmured to the stunned Eluxian beside her.
Something we developed for handling xenomegafauna on colony worlds, though Ward is particularly impressive at it.
Varkta was already up, but moving with visible caution now. The initial confidence in his posture had faded, replaced by predatory focus.
You fight strangely, human.
Ward circled, keeping light on his feet.
We call it not being an idiot. Why would I match strength with someone 3 times my mass?
He darted in, delivered 2 lightning-fast strikes to already targeted joints, then danced away before Varkta could counterattack.
I'd rather use your strength against you.
15 minutes into the fight, the pattern had established itself. Ward moved like Quicksilver, never staying still, targeting the same vulnerable points with repeated homicidal blows. Varkta, for all his power and experience, couldn't land a solid blow on the elusive human. Varkta's arms moved faster than Ward, but Ward was better at pattern recognition, anticipating Varkta's every move. The Drakari's frustration mounted visibly. His bioluminescent streaks pulsed faster. His breathing grew labored, not from exertion, but from barely contained rage.
Is this all you are good for? Running away!
He roared, all 4 arms lashing out in a devastatingly coordinated attack pattern that left no apparent escape route.
It'll take more than evasive maneuvers and weak punches to take me down.
Ward's grin widened as he dropped flat to the floor, letting the deadly limbs pass overhead, then sprang up inside Varkta's guard. Now why would I do that when you're doing such a lovely interpretive dance? The human pressed forward suddenly, his right hand curled into a rigid blade shape that drove into the increasingly damaged joint where Varkta's primary arm connected to his torso. This time, there was an audible crack as tendons snapped under the precisely targeted pressure. Ichor, oily and iridescent, seeped from the fracture. Varkta bellowed in pain and fury. His upper arm hung slightly askew, its movements now jerky and limited. With a roar that shook dust from the ceiling, he swept all three remaining functional arms in a circular pattern that Ward couldn't fully evade. One massive claw connected with Ward's torso, catching him mid-dodge. The impact lifted the human off his feet and sent him flying across the arena like a rag doll. He hit the reinforced wall with a sickening thud and slid to the floor, limbs splayed at awkward angles. A collective gasp rose from the observation deck. The force of that blow would have liquefied the internal organs of most species. For 5 heartbeats, Ward didn't move. Varkta's antennae twitched in satisfaction. His proboscis flitted out to taste the air, scenting Ward's blood.
As I thought. Soft, weak, breathe.
Then Ward laughed. The sound began low, almost a wheeze, then built into a genuine chuckle as the human pushed himself up on one elbow. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and his breathing hitched with obvious pain. But his eyes were alive with something that made several observers take involuntary steps backward. He stood slowly, methodically, cataloging injuries with detached interest. Nice hit. Been a while since someone rang my bell like that. He prodded his side, wincing slightly as his fingers found the damage beneath his torn shirt. 2 ribs, maybe 3. Not bad.
Please, you are not fooling anyone,
Varkta rumbled, genuine confusion in his multi-toned voice.
That should have shattered your spine.
Ward shrugged, then immediately regretted it as the motion sent fresh pain through his damaged ribcage. You should see what I did last weekend. He spat a mouthful of blood onto the arena floor. Now, where were we? The fight resumed, but something fundamental had changed. The Drakari's confidence was fracturing along with his exoskeleton. Every attack now carried a hint of desperation, of disbelief. Ward was moving differently too, more aggressively, accepting glancing blows to deliver his own devastating strikes. He drove knuckles into the seam of Varkta's neck segment, where nerve clusters controlled his lower arms. The Drakari's left lower arm went momentarily limp, and Ward capitalized immediately, delivering a thunderous kick to the now unprotected thorax that staggered the massive alien. That's your peripheral nervous system, Ward explained conversationally, as if conducting a xenobiology lecture. Fascinating how it's distributed through junction nodes rather than a central spine.
How?
Varkta gasped, struggling to reassert control over his spasming limb.
How do you know these things?
Ward's smile was all teeth. Lucky guess. And a fascination with entomology as a kid helps. Varkta rallied, bringing his remaining functional arms to bear in a desperate offensive. One serrated claw slashed across Ward's face, opening a deep gash from temple to cheekbone. Blood cascaded immediately, painting half the human's face in glistening crimson. Ward didn't even flinch. He blinked blood from his eye and pressed forward, delivering 3 rapid strikes to the damaged joint in Varkta's torso. More ichor spurted from widening cracks. Getting tired yet? Ward asked, voice steady despite the grotesque mask his face had become. Because I'm just warming up. On the observation deck, panic was spreading among the diplomatic corps. This wasn't how fights with Drakari ended. No one fought them to a standstill. No one absorbed punishment like this and kept advancing. Counselor Zithvar of the Eluxian Federation leaned toward Ambassador Blackwood, his normally azure skin pale with shock.
How is he still functioning?
His injuries should be debilitating at minimum, fatal at worst.
Tavia's eyes never left the arena, her expression a mixture of pride and something darker.
Captain Ward holds the unofficial record for the Lazarus Protocol. Clinical death and revival in combat conditions. 4 times and counting. That's not possible,
whispered Zvar, multifaceted eyes wide.
Humans call it the indomitable human spirit,
Tavia replied, a hint of grim humor in her voice.
Medical science calls it trauma-induced hyperadrenalism with accelerated clotting factors. Either way, it makes for one hell of a soldier.
Down in the arena, the tide had turned irrevocably. Varkta was slowing, his regenerative abilities overtaxed by the precision of Ward's relentless assault. Each targeted strike compounded the damage to already compromised systems. Ichor flowed freely from a dozen fractures in his once impervious carapace. And still the human came. Ward's uniform hung in tatters, revealing a torso mapped with fresh bruises layered over old scars. Blood matted his hair and ran in rivulets down his neck, soaking what remained of his collar. His breathing was labored, one arm held slightly closer to his damaged ribs, but his eyes remained clear and focused. Varkta lashed out with desperate strength, bringing one massive upper arm down in a hammer blow that would have split a combat mech in half. Ward partially deflected it, but the force still caught him in the chest, driving him to his knees. Blood sprayed from his mouth as something vital ruptured inside.
Finally!
Varkta wheezed, his own systems failing, yet triumph chimed in his multi-toned voice.
Submit, and I will make your death quick!
For a moment, Ward remained on one knee, head bowed, blood dripping steadily from his chin to form a small crimson pool on the arena floor. Then he looked up, meeting Varkta's compound eyes, and winked.
It's all you got, big guy? I've had hangovers that hit me harder.
And then, despite everything, despite the broken ribs, the internal bleeding, the concussion, the lacerations, he started laughing. It was the hysterical laughter of someone in shock, the unhinged cackle of madness. It was genuine amusement, as if this brutal combat was the most fun he'd had in months. The unhinged madness was the only thing keeping Ward going.
Oh, this is fun!
Ward exclaimed, pushing himself upright with visible effort. His legs trembled momentarily before locking into place.
I haven't had a workout this good since that bar fight on Mars. You know, the one where I took on 3 Jovian miners. Now those guys could hit.
He stretched, joints popping audibly, and something in his ribcage made a wet, grinding sound that carried to the horrified observers. Ward ignored it, rolling his shoulders as if merely working out a kink. Varkta took an involuntary step back, mandibles clicking rapidly in confusion. In all his centuries of combat, across dozens of subjugated worlds, he had never encountered an opponent who laughed while their body failed them.
What? Do you not feel the pain?
He demanded, his usual imperious tone replaced by genuine bewilderment. Ward's smile was warm, almost friendly, but his eyes held the ancient focus of a predator from a world where everything was trying to kill you, and you killed it first.
My dad beat me with a belt way harder than you hit.
He advanced, and now there was a subtle change to his posture, a looseness, a fluidity that hadn't been there before. It was as if the injuries had stripped away some limiting factor, allowing him to access deeper reserves.
See, that's the thing about humans,
Ward continued conversationally, closing the distance between them.
The more you hurt us, the more dangerous we become.
Varkta struck with his remaining functional arms, but the blows seemed sluggish now. Ward slipped inside his guard with terrifying ease and delivered a precise, devastating strike to the primary fracture in the Drakari's thorax. Chitin splintered with a sound like breaking pottery. The Drakari staggered, but didn't fall. His natural armor, while breached, still provided structural integrity. He fought to rally, to bring his superior mass to bear, But Ward was everywhere, striking, redirecting, undermining.
Your species evolved with perfect natural armor,
Ward said, ducking under a desperate swipe and driving his fist into a junction point behind Varkta's knee equivalent. The joint buckled.
Problem is, you stopped evolving after that. Got complacent.
The human took a heavy blow to the shoulder that would have dislocated the joint in most beings. He absorbed it, turned with it, and used the momentum to drive his elbow into a previously targeted nerve cluster. Varkta's lower right arm went completely limp.
Humans never had that luxury,
Ward continued, his breathing ragged but his voice oddly calm.
No armor, no claws, no venom. Just these fragile bodies and overactive brains.
He tapped his temple, leaving a smear of mingled red and iridescent ichor.
So we compensated, learned to turn weakness into strength.
Varkta was gasping now, his once coordinated movements reduced to desperate flailing.
You should be dead,
he wheezed, ichor bubbling from fractures that had penetrated to his respiratory system.
Probably,
Ward agreed cheerfully, despite the grotesque map of injuries visible through his shredded uniform.
But humans are funny that way. We don't stop when it hurts. We don't stop when the bones break.
His eyes locked with Varkta's compound gaze.
Some of us don't even stop when our hearts stop beating.
The observation deck had fallen utterly silent, diplomats and officials frozen in horrified fascination. They weren't watching a fight anymore. They were witnessing something primal. The moment when an apex predator realizes it's no longer at the top of the food chain. With a final desperate surge, Varkta brought all his remaining functional arms down in a crushing blow aimed at Ward's head, only to hit empty air as the human ducked under, pivoted behind him, and with precision born from 15 minutes of identifying and exploiting weaknesses, drove his fist into the largest fracture in Varkta's back. The impact shattered the compromised exoskeleton. Varkta lurched forward, lost his balance, and crashed to the ground with seismic force. The fall itself finished what Ward had started, fracturing already compromised sections of his natural armor. The Drakari champion lay on his back, multiple limbs twitching uncontrollably, ichor pooling beneath him from a dozen major breaches. His bioluminescent streaks flickered erratically like dying emergency lights. He couldn't rise. The fight was over. The arena fell silent except for Ward's ragged breathing and the soft plink of blood and ichor dripping to the concrete floor. The human stood over his fallen opponent, swaying slightly, his body a testament to the punishment it had absorbed and somehow, impossibly, endured. Blood continued to seep from the gash above his eye, running down to drip from his jaw. His left arm hung at an odd angle, and each breath produced a wet, rattling sound. But his eyes were clear, focused, and utterly, terrifyingly alert. The most feared warrior species in the galaxy had met its match in a single, unaugmented human who simply refused to stay down. Varkta lay defeated, his fearsome body broken. Ichor pooled beneath his shattered carapace, the bioluminescent streaks across his exoskeleton flickering like dying stars. His breathing came in ragged bursts, each intake sending bubbles through the fractures in his thoracic plates. 3 of his 4 arms lay at unnatural angles, the complex internal musculature visible through splintered chitin. In Drakari culture, there was only one end to such combat: death for the loser. It was the way of nature, the immutable law of their species for millennia. The strong survived, the weak perished, and defeat meant unworthiness to continue existing. Varkta knew this. The observers knew this. The entire Drakari delegation watched with grim anticipation, already calculating how this loss would affect their invasion plans. Some were mentally drafting succession protocols for the next general to take Varkta's place. The defeated warlord closed his compound eyes, each of the 12 facets shuttering one by one. He awaited the killing blow with the dignity expected of a Drakari of his rank. No pleas, no begging. Death was simply the price of failure. It never came. Instead, he felt something unexpected. A hand on his shoulder, warm against his cooling exoskeleton. Ward stood over him, one arm cradling his broken ribs, the other extended toward the fallen warlord.
Get up, big guy. You're not done yet.
The observation deck erupted in confused murmurs. Even Ambassador Blackwood looked momentarily surprised, her diplomatic mask slipping to reveal genuine astonishment.
Is this some form of human torture?
Whispered a Meraxian diplomat.
To prolong the suffering before execution?
Perhaps they wish to parade their victory,
suggested a Cytherian observer.
Force him to walk to his own execution as a symbol of humanity's dominance.
Down in the arena, Varkta's compound eyes reopened slowly, each facet reflecting the bloodied but standing human before him. His mandibles clicked in confusion, the Drakari equivalent of a furrowed brow.
Why?
The question contained volumes. Why this mercy? Why this deviation from natural law? Why this incomprehensible act that defied everything the Drakari understood about strength and dominance? Ward's face, despite being a mask of blood and bruises, softened slightly. His eyes, which had held such predatory focus during combat, now revealed something the watching aliens found even more unnerving: compassion.
Because this is what real strength looks like,
Ward said, his voice carrying through the silent arena.
Not just power, but knowing when to use it. You're beat. You learned your lesson. I trust that you know I could finish you off if I wanted to.
The translator devices around the observation deck rendered the words perfectly, but many of the alien dignitaries still leaned forward, adjusting their devices, certain they had misheard. Vexcree, the Drakari ambassador, chittered rapidly to his aides.
There must be a translation error. The concept makes no sense.
In the arena, Varkta remained motionless, struggling to process this paradigm-shattering moment. His species had conquered 17 worlds. They had encountered dozens of civilizations. None had ever shown mercy when they had advantage. Such a concept was not merely foreign. It was incomprehensible.
In your culture, the fight ends with death,
Ward continued, his hand still outstretched.
In mine, it can end with respect. You fought well. You lost honorably. That earns you tomorrow.
For several heartbeats, no one moved. The only sounds were the soft plink of Ward's blood dripping to the floor and the rasp of Varkta's damaged respiratory system. Then, slowly, with creaking chitin and oozing wounds, General Varkta reached up and took the human's hand. The contact between species, predator helping predator, sent visible shockwaves through the observation deck. Several diplomats actually gasped aloud. An Eluxian fainted. With obvious effort, Ward helped the massive Drakari to his feet, grimacing as the action pulled at his own injuries. For a moment, they stood facing each other, human and alien, both broken, both bleeding, both somehow dignified in their mutual suffering. Then Varkta did something no member of his species had ever done in recorded history. He knelt. Not collapsing from injury, not falling in defeat. A deliberate, conscious lowering to one knee, his primary right arm crossed over his shattered thorax in what was unmistakably a gesture of submission.
With respect, I yield,
he announced, his multi-toned voice carrying through the stunned arena.
Humanity's strength is proven.
On the observation deck, pandemonium erupted. The Drakari delegation chittered in agitation, mandibles clicking rapidly as they processed this unprecedented event. Several reached for weapons before remembering they had been disarmed before entering the diplomatic zone. Then Ambassador Vexcree, whose earlier dismissal of humans had triggered this entire confrontation, did something equally shocking. He stepped forward to the edge of the observation platform, his iridescent eyes fixed on the scene below, and slowly, deliberately knelt. One by one, the entire Drakari delegation followed their ambassador's example. The sound of chitinous exoskeletons settling into kneeling positions echoed through the suddenly silent chamber like strange percussion.
"What is happening?"
whispered Zithvar, the Eluxian counselor, his voice trembling.
"In 16 standard cycles of diplomatic service, I have never—" "They're acknowledging something beyond physical dominance,"
Tavia Blackwood replied softly.
"Something they've never encountered before."
In the arena, Ward looked around at the kneeling Drakari with a bemused expression. He ran a hand through his blood-matted hair, wincing as his fingers encountered a deep laceration. "Was that really so hard?" he asked, a hint of his earlier humor returning despite his injuries. Varkta's mandibles worked silently for a moment before he found his words.
You could have killed me.
"Could have," Ward agreed with a nod. "Chose not to."
Why?
The question seemed to contain all the confusion of Varkta's species, all their suddenly shaken certainty about how the universe functioned. Ward considered this, his expression thoughtful despite the mask of blood and bruises. "Where I come from, Earth, we evolved as pack hunters. Cooperation kept us alive when we were weaker than everything else on the planet. When one of us fell, others helped him up. Not out of weakness, but because together we were stronger." He gestured to his battered body. "I'm standing here because thousands of generations of humans learned that lesson. The strong protect, the victorious show restraint, the powerful choose mercy. Not because we're soft, but because that's how we became the apex predators of our world." Varkta absorbed this, his compound eyes fixed on Ward's face.
But victory gives you the right to destroy.
"Having the right to do something doesn't make it right to do," Ward replied. "That's the difference your people haven't grasped yet." From the sidelines, a medical team had finally been cleared to enter the arena. 2 human medics approached cautiously, carrying emergency equipment, their expressions professionally neutral despite the grotesque injuries visible on both combatants. Ward waved them toward Varkta first. "He's got major breaches in his respiratory system. Priority 1. The medics hesitated only a fraction of a second before changing direction, immediately beginning to assess the Drakari's injuries. Their scanner devices beeped as they cataloged the extensive damage. The watching aliens reacted with fresh shock.
"They're treating the enemy first,"
murmured a Peldori ambassador in disbelief.
Their own champion stands bleeding, yet they attend to their fallen foe,
added another. On the observation deck, Tavia Blackwood smiled faintly.
"Basic triage. Vakta's injuries are more immediately life-threatening. Ward can wait 5 minutes."
But the gathered diplomats understood the symbolic weight of the gesture. It transcended mere medical protocol. It was the physical embodiment of the principle Ward had just articulated. Victory coupled with responsibility, strength paired with compassion. As the medics worked on stabilizing Varkta's condition, the Drakari general's gaze remained fixed on Ward.
In 3 centuries of combat, I have killed thousands. I have conquered species. I have watched civilizations fall before the Drakari swarm.
His mouth clicked softly.
No one has ever shown me this.
"And you've been fighting the wrong people," Ward replied simply. A second medical team had arrived and was now insisting that Ward submit to treatment. Before allowing them to lead him away, he placed a hand once more on Varktar's shoulder. Predator to predator, warrior to warrior. When we both heal up, he said with a grin that somehow cut through the blood and bruising, I'll teach you how to throw a proper punch. Those upper arms of yours are all power, no technique. The Drakari's head tilted in what might have been confusion or might have been consideration.
You would teach your enemy?
Former enemy, Ward corrected, wincing as the medics began examining his ribs. Maybe future friend. That's another thing about humans. We're adaptable. As the two champions were escorted from the arena for medical treatment, the diplomatic corps remained in stunned silence. Species that had regarded humans as primitive, as naive, as dangerously unpredictable, now looked at the empty arena with new understanding and new fear.
Did you know he would do that?
Counselor Zuthvar asked Ambassador Blackwood quietly.
Spare the Drakari?
Tavia's eyes followed the medical team carrying Ward away.
Captain Ward makes his own decisions, but yes, I suspected he might. Why send him then? Why not a warrior who would secure total victory?
Tavia turned to the Eluxian, her expression serene but her eyes sharp.
That was total victory, Counselor. You just witnessed humanity conquering something far more valuable than a single warrior or a single species. And what is that?
Zuthvar asked, gills flapping anxiously.
The narrative, she replied. The story that will spread across the galaxy about what happened here today. Not that humans defeated the mighty Drakari, but how we defeated them.
In the medical bay, human and Drakari physicians worked side by side, centuries of xenobiological research being applied to save two species that had been ready to exterminate each other hours before. Ward lay on a treatment platform, grimacing as cellular regenerators knitted his shattered ribs and dermal sealants closed the more severe lacerations. Across the bay, Varkta was encased in a specialized chamber filled with nutrient-rich mist designed to support his species' natural healing abilities. His compound eyes remained fixed on the human who had defeated him, then saved him, then offered friendship. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, perspectives shifted. Civilizations that had been preparing for humanity's inevitable extinction now began calculating the cost of enmity with a species capable of defeating the Drakari, not just through strength, but through something far more unsettling. In the council chambers and throne rooms and hive minds of 1,000 worlds, the same question echoed. What do you do when faced with a predator species that fights like demons, but treats its vanquished foes with kindness? The answer was beginning to dawn, carrying with it both relief and existential dread. You yield, you learn, or you perish. 26 hours after the combat ended, the Galactic Council reconvened for the formal recognition of the trial's outcome. Ward, heavily bandaged but standing under his own power, took his place beside Ambassador Blackwood as Varkta, his exoskeleton partially encased in regenerative bindings, approached with Ambassador Vexcree. Before the assembled representatives of 17 species, the Drakari formally acknowledged humanity's sovereignty and pledged non-aggression. The treaty was brief, direct, and unprecedented in galactic history, the first time the Drakari had recognized any species as equals rather than prey. As Vexcree pressed his genetic signature to the document, finalizing the agreement, he looked directly at Ward.
The Drakari do not forget,
he said, voice solemn.
We will remember what happened here.
Ward nodded, his expression equally serious. So will we.
This changes the calculations,
Vexcree continued.
The galaxy is different now.
It's kind of the point, Ward replied with a small smile. Change is the only constant. When the ceremony concluded, Varkta approached Ward privately. The two stood facing each other, their bodies bearing the visible evidence of their combat, yet somehow transformed from enemies to something neither had vocabulary to define.
My species does not have a concept for what you did,
the Drakari general admitted.
For the choice you made.
Mercy, Ward supplied. Compassion. Humanity.
These are weaknesses in Drakari understanding.
Ward shook his head. They're only weaknesses if you lack the strength to back them up. I didn't spare you because I couldn't kill you. I spared you because I could, and chose not to. He held the alien's gaze steadily. That's the privilege of the truly strong, Vakta. The power to choose mercy. The Drakari was silent for a long moment, processing this paradigm shift.
I will consider this concept. It is alien to us.
Most worthwhile things start out as alien concepts, Ward replied, before they become obvious truths. As they parted ways, Varktar hesitated, then extended his least damaged arm in what was clearly an attempt to mimic a human handshake.
Until we meet again, Captain Ward.
Ward took the offered limb carefully, mindful of both their injuries. Next time without trying to kill each other, I hope.
Perhaps,
Varktar agreed, his mandibles clicking in what might have been the Drakari equivalent of a smile.
Perhaps next time as not enemies.
It wasn't friendship. It wasn't alliance. But it was something new in the galaxy. A bridge between fundamentally different ways of understanding strength and weakness, power and responsibility. And as the human delegation prepared to depart, 1,000 diplomatic dispatches raced across subspace to 1,000 worlds, all carrying variations of the same message. The humans defeated the Drakari not just with strength, but with something far more dangerous, something that might change everything. The Galactic Council chamber reconvened 48 hours later. Ward, now patched up with dermal sealants but still sporting impressive bruises, stood beside Ambassador Blackwood as the Drakari delegation formally recognized Earth's sovereignty and pledged non-aggression. The other Council species watched in muted horror.
"They're stronger than the strongest warlords," whispered a Peldori diplomat to his aide.
"They're smarter than the smartest tacticians,"
murmured a Cytherian observer.
"And worst of all,"
added a Meraxian counselor,
"they are kind."
The formal ceremony concluded with the signing of the Earth-Drakari Non-Aggression Pact. As the delegates filed out, Raxlier, a junior Drakari diplomat, approached a Thalasian ambassador.
"We've fought 17 species before encountering humans,"
he confided, mandibles tight with stress.
"None surrendered to us, and we showed no mercy. Yet, when they had every right to kill our champion, they offered friendship."
The Thalasian's gill flaps pulsed anxiously.
"We should never make an enemy of them, because if they ever stop being kind, we won't survive."
Ward, overhearing as he passed by, smirked.
"Relax, we like you guys. Just don't push your luck."
Later, as the human delegation prepared to depart, Ambassador Vexcree approached Tavia Blackwood with uncharacteristic hesitation.
"Your champion,"
he said, mandibles clicking softly.
"He could have killed Vakta. Why chose he compassion over triumph?"
Tavia glanced across the docking bay where Ward was chatting amicably with a group of wide-eyed alien engineers, explaining something with animated hand gestures.
"What triumph is there in needless killing? We are stronger as allies,"
she replied simply.
"Besides, this experience has taught you we are capable of lethal violence out of sheer willpower. Whatever could we do with weapons?"
Tavia smiled. As the humans walked away, leaving the Drakari humbled but alive, Vexcree turned to his aid and spoke words that would be recorded in Drakari histories for generations to come.
The scariest thing about humans isn't their strength. It is their triumphant compassion.